Let's compare some portraits, which I just drew. This is Rule 13's portrait. As you can see, she has a smaller nose than Sooyoung. You'll be able to see that when you compare her later. Her eyes are a little more brilliant. The line on the bottom of the eyes is more straight. She has her face is not as plump as Sooyoung, and her lips are fuller, and her lips tend to curve downwards, like a sort of a frown. It's not really a frown, but they have a downward curve, as opposed to Sooyoung, who has an upward curve to her lips. And you might think, oh, that's just because she's frowning. No, in this picture, she's not frowning. She has a straight face, and her lips tend to curve down. She has a more square jawline. Her hair is coarser. Her jawline's a little bit more pronounced and square than Sooyoung. Sooyoung is softer than Rule 13 in her aspects, in her hair, in her eyes, and everything. She has softer lines, more curves to her lines. And Rule 13 has more brilliance in her appearance. Her eyes are more brilliant. Her eyelashes are a little bit thicker. You might think, oh, she's probably wearing fake eyelashes. No, I believe she does have thicker eyelashes than Sooyoung. And she has thicker hair than Sooyoung. Rule 13, her nose is smaller, and you can just see in the picture that these are not the same women. The Jesuits are trying to say that I'm a victim of trolls, and that the pictures of Rule 13 that have been sent to me by my trolls are really of Sooyoung. But I'm going to show you that these are two different women. I draw portraits, as you can see, and so I notice little details that some people may overlook, and I'm pointing them out to you right now. Now let's take a look at Sooyoung. Sooyoung has broader, flatter nose, and it's a bigger nose. Her eyes have lines that kind of curve up at the bottom, and she's softer in appearance than Rule 13. Her hair is softer. Her facial lines are softer. Her face is more plump, and her cheeks tend to be more plump than Rule 13. Rule 13's cheeks are very high. Sooyoung's mouth tends to curve upwards. I studied several of her portraits, and what I basically have drawn here is like a composite of all the portraits that I studied online. And I can tell some of the pictures have been doctored, but I think I've pretty much captured her basic essence here in this portrait. She is not the same person as Rule 13. Her hair has got a softer texture to it. She has more of a shine in her hair than Rule 13, a little bit more of a curl in her hair. Even though her hair is thinner and softer than 13's, it's got a little bit of a wave to it, whereas 13's hair is very straight and coarse. And these are both attractive women, so it's not like I'm trying to knock anyone down. What I'm trying to do is point out that these are two different women. Rule 13 is not Sooyoung. Okay, she is Rule 13. And Sooyoung has more of a happy-go-lucky, happy look on her face, whereas Rule 13 looks like she's more committed, intense, and brilliant. So they're just two different women. They're not the same women. And as an artist, when you draw, I've never taken an art course, but obviously I must know enough about lines, or I wouldn't be able to do such a good job on portraits here. So they're just two different women. And, the Jesuits are trying to create the impression that I'm crazy and that I'm a victim of trolls. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw a picture of Zach Knight and compare it with Robin Fitch, because they're claiming that the pictures of Zach Knight are the same as Robin Fitch, and that just isn't the case. When I look at them, Robin Fitch actually looks like he's a nicer person than Zach Knight, and their nose is not the same. It's kind of hard to get a good view of Zach Knight, but I see enough of him on the portrait that I see that I can draw a pretty good likeness, and I'll be working on a portrait of him. I will also be doing a portrait of Terrance Jenkins and Lester Holt and show you that those are not the same people. And I can't remember who else was there, but these Jesuits are just full of crap. You know, they're trying to create the impression that, and they've put clever lookalikes up there. They've actually doctored some of the photos to make the Lester Holt look like Terence Jenkins and vice versa, but they're just not the same. So you study these portraits, you say, well, they're portraits, yeah, but I base them on real pictures. And the reason I chose to do portraits is I don't have to be in violation of copyright by doing this. And as an artist, I can highlight the differences more in the drawing so that you can see that Rule 13 is not Sooyoung, the Korean singer. So just don't believe this Jesuit crap, you know. Who else did they have up there? They said they had Rule 13. They're not the same. And somebody like me who has an artist's eye, I can see the differences. And I just, like I said, I decided to draw a portrait to point it out. They're just full of crap. There is a genuine Rule 13 out there, and she is the head of the military for the Jesuit order, and she's in love with Zach Knight, and she is a main character in, you know, the book that I'm currently working on. I think I'm going to put these pictures up at my website to show the world how clever these Jesuits are and how deceptive they are. I just drew me some pictures. This is a portrait of Sooyoung, the Korean singer that the Jesuits claim is Rule 13. I actually drew this portrait of her. As you can see, her, so how'd you do it? Just pencil. As you can see, her nose is broader. Here's Rule 13. This is a genuine, I drew a portrait of Rule 13 here. Rule 13 has her nose is a little bit shorter, and it's not quite as broad, and it's a little bit more pronounced, and it's smaller, and she has fuller lips, and her eyes tend to be very straight at the bottom, and she has more of a square jawline, and I emphasize that in this drawing of her. Sooyoung, whom the Jesuits claim they claim that the picture that they have of Rule 13 is Sooyoung. This is, I looked at Sooyoung. Sooyoung's eyes tend to go upward a little bit. Her nose is flatter. It's a little bit larger. And her mouth tends to go upwards instead of straight or down. You see that? And she's got a fuller fleshed face. Her cheeks stick out more. Whereas Rule 13's cheeks are a little higher. Her cheeks are higher. Her lips are fuller, her jawline's more square, her eyes are more straight on the bottom and not kind of tilting upwards like with Sooyoung. These are two different women. You say, well, that's a drawing. Yeah, but I based these drawings on pictures. I could tell some of the pictures were doctored, but I was able to tell that these are two different women. Also, Rule 13's hair is coarser, thicker, and straighter. And she also has more brilliance in her eyes than does Sooyoung. And here's Sooyoung. Now, they're both pretty girls, but as you can see, they're two different women. The Jesuits are trying to claim that these are the same women, and they're not. They look, like I said, the nose is flatter and broader on Sooyoung. Her lips are not quite as full, and they tend to go up. And you say, have you ever taken an art course? No, I just think I have natural ability here. So I'm going to feature these two portraits at my website so you can compare. And when the Jesuits are claiming that the picture they have of Rule 13 is Sooyoung, they're lying to you. They've used they're using their propaganda, their ability to clone the internet to put they're doctoring some of the pictures of Sooyoung to make her look more like Rule 13, and they're doing the same thing with Rule 13 to make her look more like Sooyoung. And they're trying to say that this picture that my men are sending me of Rule 13 is actually a picture of Sooyoung, but no, it's not. These are, if you look closely at the pictures, you can tell they are two different ladies. And I actually drew a portrait of Rule 13 to emphasize the differences. The more square jawline, the more brilliant eyes, the smaller nose in 13 and the fuller lips, and the coarser, thicker hair in 13, as opposed to Sooyoung, who's got thinner hair, and her eyes tend to tilt up, and her lips tend to tilt up, and she has a fuller cheek and a fuller face and flatter, bigger nose. Two different women. And I figured I didn't want to put pictures up there because the Jesuits might say, oh, copyright, that it's okay for me to do an artist drawing, so that's what I've done. I'm going to try to I'm going to try to expose the Jesuit propaganda campaign. Them claiming that that Rule 13, the pictures of Rule 13 are pictures of Sooyoung. I've just shown you from that picture that that is not the case.